What's happened to my underwear?
Oh, I literally have no idea.
So sorry, but do we know each other?
Yeah, no, I ran you over.
We live in time. Can you tell me about sort of encountering Nick Payne's script for the first time? How does this project come into your life?
So Nick is a writer I know and love very well. I had directed a play by him at the Donmar Warehouse something like 9 years ago. And the first I heard of it was when he texted me and said, there's a script coming your way and, hope you like it, let me know, type of thing. And then Sonny March, who had commissioned the script, sent me the script and I read it and obviously loved it and went and met them on it. When I first read it, I'll be honest, I was a little resistant when I sort of realized what it was about sort of 20 pages in. I was like, ooh, this is, hard to do. But by the time I got to the birth scene in the petrol station, spoiler alert, but then I was totally in because I was reading it, laughing out loud, but with tears in my eyes, and that sort of toggling or spinning between the joy and the absurdity of it and the profundity of that child being born. I sort of felt it deeply and knew that this was going to be the next year and a half of my life.
I'm Alma, by the way.
Tobias.
We're going to make sure you have the time of your life.
Hi.
Hi. Probably ought to get going.
Who says? Unless you have shit to do, then...
I have nothing.
I think it has this wonderful, very, very profound balance of sweetness and sadness. I think when this film was kind of very initially being talked about and gossiped about, it was almost with the idea of this is a rom-com. This is a romantic film, and I would say this is a comedic film, but it also...
But that doesn't make it a rom-com.
It's going to sit really outside of maybe expectations around rom-com. I'm curious about how you approach a script like this, where it is kind of sitting in quite a unique space, maybe genre-wise.
Well, for a start, I'm drawn to stuff that sits in that odd space, which would probably drive people around me a bit mad, because I'm happy if it's sort of neither one thing nor the other. And I think rom-coms are tricky. They're very difficult because there are the great, Richard Curtis ones, but it's sort of become a slightly debased idea of late. And a lot of romantic films have migrated maybe to period dramas as well. So the idea of a contemporary London drama, which has comedy in it and romance in it, is a difficult proposition. There was no bit of me thought it was a rom-com when I was making it. For me, it's absolutely, a drama about two people trying to make a life together. The upshot of that, though, especially in the hands with these two actors and Nick's writing, is that it winds up feeling profoundly romantic. And the comedy was central. For me, the comedy is something which allows you, it's like a heat shield. It allows you to get closer to a darker or more serious issue that's lurking at the core of the story. But it is fair to say that as a film, it obeys none of the guardrails of what you expect from a rom-com. And the surprise is inherent in it, and that was very, very important to me. It made maybe some of our financiers a bit nervous at the start, because it's a film about cancer, which doesn't quite sit comfortably into any genre. But I always think that audiences are always ahead of us anyway. And, when at the minute we test screened it, they were there with it and got it and went, yeah, great, we're up for it. And so that's quite reassuring.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk more about the story and how it's about cancer, but it's also just a film where cancer happens.
Exactly.
It's not
actually a portrait of that. It's it is like real life. It's just the reality of it. Yeah.
Really anchored in two people's lives. And so let's talk about those two people, because what an amazing cast we have for this film. Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh. First of all, I know Andrew Garfield as Tobias is someone you've worked with before, I think in his feature debut.
That's correct.
Sort of 15, almost 20 years ago with Boy A.
That's correct, yeah.
What made him feel like the right choice for this for you? And how was it sort of returning to that working relationship?
Well, he has a degree of emotionality as an actor and as a human being that felt like he would handle the scale of what was needed in the role with Tobias, that he has a depth And he's just at ease with his own emotions. But also, he's very funny, Andrew. You know, he's a really good comedian, and he's a great physical comedian. And I thought that the role would offer him a great chance of showing those two aspects in all its glory, and that he wouldn't over quirkify Tobias, if that makes sense. You know, Mr. Weetabix, that he wouldn't overly play the odd angles of him. He'd make him quite real and lovable, and he did. So, yeah, it felt to me that he would also really relish it, and it was right, because we had kept in touch and talked about a couple of other things over the years, and it was never the right project at the right time. And this really hit him very forcibly. I also felt he'd have a relationship to this sort of grief in the script, having lost his mother. I know that was a big thing for him. So I think he had an understanding on a deep level of what this film's about.
Yeah, and what a poignant project for you two to come back together with this, you know,
Very
how
much
does
so.
time affect our relationships?
I know. I mean, with Boy A, he was playing a broken kid in lots of ways. And the terror that was in that role, which was also probably partly the terror that was in Andrew at the start of his career, which is this going to work? And you could feel he was almost vibrating with it. And now it's very different. He's a grown man, and he's had such vast experience in his career, vast number of sets that he's been on, vast different kind of variety of work, both on stage and screen, that he's extraordinarily accomplished now.
What's the rush?
Because I'm worried that there's a very distinct and real possibility that I am about to fall in love with you.
I'm okay. It's okay, honestly. It's okay not to be okay. It's a lot.
So then, having your Tobias, you have to find your Almut.
We did.
And you score Florence Pugh, who I have to say, this role almost feels like it was written for her and to her strengths.
I know. But that's the great... I think both of them, you watch both of them now, right? And you think it's hard to think that it wasn't written for them. And indeed it wasn't, right? It's just, but Florence, I didn't know at all. I'd never met her. I was a huge admirer of her work and her many performances. And especially this sort of strength and toughness that she can display without being losing her vulnerability. But I thought that the scale of vulnerability that was in this role, and indeed maybe the scale of it overall emotionally, was something that we hadn't quite seen from her yet, and that was an exciting opportunity for her to maybe extend what she had done. They had never met. The first time they met was giving out an Oscar together. And you never know with chemistry. You simply don't know. I mean, people can tell you, "Oh, I knew." It's nonsense. And in a way, all casting is a leap in the dark. All right, you just don't know. You have your instinct, but no more than that. But very quickly in rehearsals, I could see that there were moments sparking to life that were thrilling and really exciting, and it also was quite apparent that they really liked each other, and that very quickly they began to trust each other creatively within the space. Because the film really does stand down. It's what happens between their eye line, and that began to grow quite naturally, and they were so there for each other in those scenes. And about day 4 of the shoot, we shot the big underground car park scene, and that was the first big heavy lifting scene that the pair of them had to do. And they were nervous when they came on set that morning, because everything we'd shot until then was a little lighter in its tone and a little easier, easing them into it, as it were. And after shooting that scene, I mean, apart from the fact that the burly guys in black fleeces around the camera were all wiping tears away from their eyes, which is always a sign that something's happening in front of the camera, Clarence called Andrew and myself over and said, that was weird. That was I think what she said was that I don't understand how that was as easy as it was. And she didn't mean it didn't cost her. I think what she meant was to be able to clear the hurdle on a scene that difficult. It was a new thing for her to have somebody that present with her in a scene who was actually allowing her to go straight into the emotional core of the scene without having to pump something up herself on her side of the camera. And that's what they were finding, is that the emotion then was very connected between them and organic, and then at times very playful. You know, that's the other aspect of the relationship, is that they would then be able to spin on a halfpenny between the tones needed in the material.
It's funny you mentioned the sort of presenting the Oscar together, because I remember that, because I remember the avalanche of tweets saying, get these two in a film
We need
together.
a film with these two right now. And I was like, well, hang on there.
You wait.
Yeah, there's one on the way.
Yeah, I think something that will delight people as well is that obviously they have this comedic rapport, but there is such a real kind of connection and relationship. And I think that sort of naturalism really flows through the film.
Yeah.
I love the London that we see
Yes.
in this film. I love the version of London around Herne and South London, walking through the park. I think that really speaks to this film being not sort of in that rom-com space of like, how do you meet someone against the backdrop of London, glitzy and shiny? It feels very real.
We were trying to not fetishize London in that way. We were trying to, like, London doesn't need it. I mean, it's beautiful. I love London. And I wanted to make a film which felt a bit closer to the London that I live in, which just looks realer, really, you know? And so we really worked hard to let the appropriate amount of Londonness into the back of the film.
Hit me where the heart is, I want to feel where the new start is, if this is real. Show me how to love you, tell me how to hold you, I'll be who you are.
You and Nick Payne, the writer of the film again, have really extensive backgrounds in theatre as well as in film and TV. Spent a lot of time at the Donmar, which is one of my favourite places in the world. I, watching the film, really feel like maybe you've brought some creative tools from the world of theatre. You know, this is such an intimate, very natural. I'm wondering how you think your work impacts how you treat the film, coming from that kind of space.
I mean, a piece which, for me, felt, okay, let me cut it another way. There's two aspects to the film. The time structure felt wonderfully cinematic to me, right? And felt almost like a playful version of Nick Roig, right? Of jumping around and so I was very excited about the editorial possibilities that were coming down the line. In terms of the emotional heart of the film, I made a very conscious decision that I was going to double down and then double down on the truthfulness of performance in each scene. And that was the point, is that actually, I thought, okay, if we can, you know, with two great actors, and they are two great actors, to really go as far as we could go into it feeling like they were just thinking off the top of their head while they were absolutely being true to the core of the writing and being very specific about Nick's beautiful script. And marrying those two and going as far as we could into the truthfulness, that felt to me really rich. And then it wasn't about what kind of genre is it. It wasn't about how thin the material is. It's like, no, if we can get those dimensions into it, that could really be rather fresh and exciting. That is the kind of stuff that I guess you do in a rehearsal room for a play, maybe a bit more than on films normally. Filmmaking tends to be a bit more of an industrial process. The way it affected the sort of industrial machine around us was, I had a great crew who were all primed that when those actors started walking towards the set, it was to be as calm and as unchaotic as humanly possible. So they would walk into the room, if it was a real room, or walk onto the set if it was a set of a room, and it would be ready for them to just simply tumble into the scene with nothing in their eyeline. So there was a sort of feeling that you were kind of trying to create a kind of magical space for them to just do what they needed to do every day and not to be bothered by anything outside of it. That feels a little bit closer to a process that you get usually in a theatre. It's almost like the idea of the empty space. Peter Brook, like you're creating a magic carpet for something magical to happen in. And it is essentially a two-hander with a wonderful cast of people who come in and out of that, but the intensity and complexity of what goes on between the two of them is everything. It was going to stand up or fall down on that basis. So, yeah, I mean, and one of the great pleasures I have on a set is watching actors, always. And in this instance, watching two really beautiful actors crack moments wide open in an emotional way or in a surprising way for the first time was really thrilling, yeah.
Cracking them open on a flat surface.
Cracking open on a flat surface, there you go. That could be the alternative title of the film.
Thank you so much. Congratulations on the film.
Thank you.
I am guilty of looking ahead instead of right in front of me. At you.
Is it? I'm fine to walk, honestly.
This is ridiculous. Sorry, okay. You okay?
Thank you for watching Picture House Cinema's unique video content. Hit the subscribe button to be kept up to date with our movie news, cast and crew interviews, highlights, trailers, and lots more.